welcome. We are on the law of justice, love, and charity, which is chapter 11 of the natural laws. And we are going to start today on question 880, the right of property theft. So we studied last week the natural rights and justice, and now we're going to start with right of property theft. Paco, can you read for us?
Yes, of course. The right of property theft. What is the first natural right of human beings? The right to live. Therefore, no one has the right to take the life of another or do anything that may compromise that individual's existence.
Okay.
So the right to live, okay.
Yeah, so we start here with a very important question that we discussed throughout this book, but here is a very straight answer from the spirits. The first natural right of human beings is the right to live. Therefore, no one has the right to take the life of another or do anything that may compromise that individual's existence. And this applies to everything. So when we talk about all the situations in life where there is an attempt to eliminate the life of a living spirit, an incarnated spirit, or a spirit in the process of reincarnating, we have no right, according to the natural laws, to take the life of another spirit.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Okay, that means that capital punishment, sending someone to die, and abortion is definitely against, that's not a right.
It's a derogation of the natural law. Exactly,
okay.
Okay, now let's try, because of course we always bring to these two subjects. Let us be very careful when we talk, because you find a lot of people that say that Spiritism is against death penalty or against abortion. Spiritism is not against anything. Spiritism explains cause and consequence. Spiritism tells us that to cause the death of another spirit, another human being, is to go against the natural laws. So you create a responsibility for yourself, a consequence on your action. And a question that we have from Eliana is, what does that leave soldiers whose job it is to kill? That's a different story, because they are doing their job. The responsibility there is for those that send them to war much more than them. And we studied that when we studied wars in the law of
war.
One of the laws, I forgot which law was. But again, as long as they are doing their job, what we see is a lot of soldiers that become that perform actions that are not according to God's law, meaning acts of evil acts that then they will be fully responsible for their actions. But if they are in the middle of a battleground shooting at the enemy, then their responsibility is very limited because of what they are doing there. Now, when nowadays here in this country, you enlist yourself if you want to. So you have more responsibility than when you were drafted, because when you were drafted, you had no option. You had to follow orders, or you will go to jail, or you had to escape the country. Nowadays, you have options. So it increases your responsibility because we are responsible for our actions. When you enlist today, you know that that may be one of the consequences of your being in the army, that you are going to have to fight in a war. So again, it's cause and consequence, is the responsibility and the understanding of your own action. And that's what we discussed here many times. The more you know, the more responsible you are. So when we go back all the way to the beginning, when a caveman killed the neighbor because they were fighting for food, there is almost no responsibility because we are almost at the animal stage. Now, when you do something knowing your responsibilities nowadays, there is a more serious consequence. Okay?
Got it. What about self-defense?
Go
ahead.
We discussed that in, yeah, we were not in the classes recently. Self-defense is not, you are defending yourself. So our first duty is to preserve our own life, right? So if someone is trying to take our own life and in the process we end up in self-defense killing the other person, there is, again, the consequences in our own conscience, right? So when your conscience is clean that you killed in self-defense because it was your only option, there is no stain in your conscience that is going to make you face the consequences because your mind is clear. When we are the ones that create the consequence for ourselves. There is no external punishment for those actions. It's our own responsibility that we are going to eventually, as we evolve and we face the actions that we took during our existences, more than one, we'll find how much we knew and how much we were responsible for our own actions, right? You go back to the examples of children that, you know, a 2-year-old is less responsible than a 14-year-old and so on and so forth. But there is no external punishment. There is only a natural law of cause and consequence. So if you kill someone knowing exactly what you are doing, you are going to have to face the consequences. You are going to be responsible, and you will eventually find yourself responsible, and you will have to, because of the law of evolution, the law of progress, you will want to repair the mistakes.
Exactly, well explained. Okay.
Anyone else?
Does the right to live?
Anyone else?
The right to,
I'm just asking if anyone else has any questions. Otherwise, we'll continue. Because then we go really to the subject, which is the right of property and theft. Okay. Go ahead.
Does the right to live give people the right to hoard wealth so that they can rest when no longer able to work? Yes, but they should do this in collaboration with their family by honest labor, as bees do, not by accumulating wealth in a selfish manner. Some animals serve as an example of this kind of foresight.
Okay, first thing, the word hoard there, you can replace by accumulate. It's not that it's wrong because it has that meaning, but nowadays because of what we hear about
yeah, that's true. That is true. That is true. Hoard, it's like negative, yes.
Yeah, it's a negative connotation, but so it's the right to accumulate wealth. And the spirits tell us we have all rights to accumulate wealth as long as is done by honest labor, and that we not accumulate wealth in a selfish manner. Again, we have to remember this is 1857, and that was
1857.
Yeah, that was pretty much a very difficult subject, because you had the rich, the noble, accumulating wealth and not distributing it, and you have the poor people struggling to survive. Nowadays, we have a better distribution system. Again, we're not going to say it's ideal, and it's not even close to ideal, but the distribution system nowadays is much more efficient than it was 200, 160 years ago. So the approach here on this series of questions will be of, yes, we have the right to accumulate wealth, but we have the responsibility to help those in need. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Do humans have the right to defend what they have accumulated with their work? It was God who said, "Thou shalt not steal," and Jesus who said, "Give Caesar what is Caesar's, but give to God what is God's." What people have accumulated by honest labor is legitimate property that they're entitled to defend. The possession of property, that is the fruit of work, is a natural right, as sacred as the right to labor or the right to live. Wow.
Okay. Yes, that's very important here, because at that time also Karl Marx was starting to become more known with his work, The Capital. So the possession of property that is the fruit of work is a natural right, as sacred as the right to labor and the right to live. That's Kardec telling us. The spirits tell us it was God who said, "Thou shalt not steal," and Jesus who said, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, but give to God what is God's." That's when he was asked by the Jewish people if he was right to pay. They show him a coin, and they asked him if it was right to pay tributes. And of course they wanted him to say, to make a statement against the domination of the Roman Empire at that time in the Jewish community. And Jesus, as always, comes with a wise answer that does not compromise, does not call for rebellion or anything. He just says, who's the face in this coin? And they say it's Caesar's. So he said, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, but give to God what is God's." So he separates the physical from the spiritual. But then Kardec complements that, what we accumulate by honest labor is legitimate property. And again, we humans at our stage of evolution, we evolve by working and being rewarded by the work. We are still not at a stage, again, humans as we are all, we have, of course we have exceptions, but we are not at a stage as human beings of working for the benefit of others without thinking about ourselves. The majority of us wants work to get paid and to have a better life. And the more they get paid, the better they feel about themselves and about their lives. It's natural, it's at our stage of evolution, is what we are doing. And it's important to understand that the differences between us is what moves us to work harder, us as human beings, to work harder and to try to improve ourselves, to improve our life conditions. So whatever we get from that, the possessions we get from our honest labor, belongs to us. It's our right. There is nothing wrong with that, and the spirits nor Kardec said anything against the possession of property acquired through honest labor. Of course, you can have a lot of sub-questions on that, right? And these sub-questions were addressed in different parts of the book. So, meaning, if your grandfather stole a lot and now you are inheriting a fortune, should you give it away? And the spirits answered us, it's not your responsibility for what your grandfather did. So if you don't feel comfortable with it, use it to help others, use to help humanity, but don't throw it away, something that is only going to make you become a burden to society. These are very important concepts that for us to understand according to the spirits. Okay. Any questions? No, I don't see any hands raised. No. Okay, go ahead.
Is the desire to own things natural? Yes, but when it is simply for yourself and for personal satisfaction, it is. But when it is simply for yourself and for personal satisfaction, it is selfishness. Is the desire to have possessions legitimate, since those who can support themselves are not a burden to others? Some people are greedy and accumulate wealth merely in order to satisfy their own passions and without providing any benefit to anyone. Do you think that this makes God happy? On the contrary, those who accumulate wealth by honest labor to help their fellow human beings practice the law of love and charity and receive God's blessings. Okay,
first, let us bring the language to nowadays, right? We are not going to make God happy or unhappy. That was the language that was used by the religions and are still used. And Kardec had to follow what was well known and well discussed. Now we know better. We know that God, being eternal and perfect, God doesn't become happy or unhappy, angry or sad.
Exactly.
These are not characteristics of perfection. So making God happy or receive God's blessing is, if we go towards the natural law, if we follow the natural law, we are going to make things easier and better for us. If we go against the natural law, we are going to create problems for ourselves. That's the meaning of making God happy or making God or receiving God's blessing. So here the spirits bring the notion of selfishness in accumulating wealth. And again, we have to understand here that there is no quantity of wealth that is there is a line where above it you have to share and below you shouldn't share. Each one has their own necessities, their own needs, and each one have their own level of comfort that will allow you to be of service to others. So it's important to understand that when we are struggling to survive, it's very difficult to find time to help others, because we are so worried with our own problems that we don't have time to dedicate to others in need. When we reach a point of comfortable living, meaning we are less worried about our own necessities, financial necessities, that's when we have to start thinking about sharing, about helping others, about being of service for those in need. But that line is different for each person. You know, someone that comes from nothing can be very satisfied or not with having just you know, a place to live and the basic necessities. Some that comes from nothing will only be satisfied when they live in a mansion and have 3 cars and things like that. Again, each one will be responsible for their own actions. But what the spirits are telling us here, that when stops being to fulfill our necessity and start becoming selfish accumulation of riches, that's when we start getting in trouble with our own conscience, and we'll start having problems. So it's very important to have this understanding, because some people, let's say some people that are born in a wealthy family, they are used to certain living conditions that's the basis for them to be in peace, and above that is where they can help. And these are different levels for each person, and each one has to make their own to look at their conscience and make their own decisions. The important thing is here is when we start becoming selfish and accumulating for our own benefit, when we would have condition to we are in conditions of helping others, that's when we start creating problems for ourselves. Was I clear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Any questions here? No. Okay. So there you go.
Okay.
Read the next
Go on.
two. Yeah, the last two.
The next two. Okay. What constitutes legitimate property? No property is legitimate unless acquired without harming others. The law of love and justice forbids us to treat others in a manner that we do not want others to treat us. Condemns every means of obtaining property or wealth that will contradict that law. Is the right to property unlimited? Everything that has been legitimately acquired is property. However, as we have said, since human laws are flawed, they frequently establish conventional rights that contradict natural justice. For this reason, society reforms its laws as progress is accomplished and as it obtains a better notion of justice. What appears right in one country is barbarous in another.
Century, not country.
Okay.
What appears right in one century is barbarous in another.
A century, yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, yeah. So what constitutes legitimate property? No property is legitimate unless acquired without harming others. So that's the basics. If we are practicing the basic teaching of Jesus, do unto others what you like others to do unto you, if we are harming someone to acquire any property, and here we talk about property in all its sense. It's not a property like a house or a car. Any property, anything that we acquire, if we harm others, we are not acquiring legitimate property. So that will create a problem, will create a responsibility for us. We cannot go against the divine law, and if we acquire illegitimate property, in reality we are stealing, and stealing go against the natural law.
Yes.
But the right of property is not unlimited, because it goes until the limit where you start creating problems with your neighbor, right? So we have human laws that that define what are our limits and how can we have property, but human laws we know that are imperfect. So when in doubt, we have to go to our conscience and go back to what Jesus told us. We don't want to do to others what we don't want others to do unto us. We want to treat others in the manner we do want others to treat us. So if by acquiring any property, any type of property, we are violating this law, then it's not something legitimate, right? Okay. No questions? Wow, people are quiet today. What's going on here? Okay, so nobody has any doubts about property. Everybody is very comfortable with their properties, with what they have, and how they are sharing their wealth or helping others. Okay, so now we go into charity and loving your neighbor.
Okay. What is the true meaning of the word charity as used by Jesus? Benevolence for everyone, indulgence towards the imperfections of others, and forgiveness of offenses. Wow. Love and charity complement the law of justice, since loving your neighbor is to do to them all the good in our power, all that we would wish to have done to ourselves. This is the meaning behind Jesus' words. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. According to Jesus, charity is not restricted to giving alms, but covers all our relations with our fellow human beings, whether inferior, equal, or superior. It preaches indulgence on our part because we need the same ourselves, and it forbids us from humiliating the unfortunate as is too often done. How many of us lavish respect and attention on the rich? They think that being civil to the poor is not worth the time or effort. Yet the more deplorable the situation of the poor, the more painstakingly we should refrain from adding humiliation to their misfortune. Those who are truly kind try to elevate those others to the level by reducing the distance between them. Wow.
Okay, so this is one of the most important answers from the spirits. First, we have to understand what the word charity means because most people think of, when you talk about charity, they think as giving alms, giving money.
Alms, that's true.
That's the general understanding of charity. And charity, as we can see here, is much more than that. Actually, giving money is a very small part of being charitable.
Mm-hmm.
To be truly charitable is to have benevolence for everyone, indulgence towards the imperfections of others, and forgiveness of offenses. Now, easy, beautiful to read, very hard to put in practice.
That's so true.
Because we have benevolence for some, indulgence towards very few, and we forgive no offenses. That's the majority of us.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Because when I talk about benevolence for everyone, means everyone,
Mm-hmm.
indistinctively. Love your neighbor as yourself, as Jesus told us. So to love our neighbor as ourselves, we have to be able to forgive any offense. And again, those that watched the lecture last Saturday by Dr. Vicente Pessoa truly understood the importance of forgiveness for ourselves, not for others.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful lecture. If you have not seen it, I recommend that you go to our YouTube page, SGNY YouTube page. Subscribe to it if you haven't done it yet. and watch the lecture because it's beautiful. It's very, very good. So that covers forgiveness. And, if you have questions about forgiveness, you go to the lecture. Don't ask me. Right, Zoraida? Isn't a beautiful lecture?
Yes, absolutely. I remember him definitely. And one thing I remember about that lecture, if I remember right, that he said, when you want to forgive, the way you could forgive is don't feel pain when you remember.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little more with that? Meaning that if anyone did you harm, if you remember that pain, then you don't forgive. Then we usually say, oh yeah, okay, I'll forgive, yeah, okay. But then when that memory comes back, that is the most difficult thing to do, I believe. And I remember that distinctly, that if you remember the pain, then forgiveness is not there yet. Am I right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. That was one of the most important points of the lecture. What you really forgave when you remember, it's not when you forget. It's
right.
when you remember and feels no pain. Then you really forgave.
Exactly. What happened to the man and his family? Yes, and he forgave.
And again, forgiveness is for you to get rid of your own problems, your own pain.
Yes.
Has nothing to do with the person you are forgiving.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
Because, if someone may hurt you and they don't even know or care about it. So there is no point in for that person for you to forgive. They are not asking for forgiveness. But if you are offended and you do not forgive, then you are harming yourself. That's the point.
Yes.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Now.
And then
Yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So the benevolence for everyone, meaning to accept everyone as they are.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that you approve the actions of the others. No. It's just that you accept people as they are with their own limitations, with their own imperfections, understanding that we are all in this journey of progressing, of evolving, and we are all limited in different aspects, each one of us, that we have to work and to improve. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. So that comes the second one, which is indulgence towards the imperfections of others, because you want others to have indulgence towards your own imperfections, because unless we are perfect, we will have imperfections, and we are not perfect, except Paco. I forgot.
That's right.
Right. Paco's the perfect one. Absolutely. We forget about Paquito here.
So we need indulgence for ourselves. If we are not giving indulgence towards others, how should I ask for us to have indulgence from others?
Exactly.
And then Kardec here goes in the part of at that time, right? That still happens today, that we lavish the rich and we ignore the poor, or we ignore. We don't pay any attention to them. I remember that beautiful movie that I watched about the guy helping the homeless. I forgot the name of the movie now. That the homeless at one point tells him, listen, do you think that you are making a difference giving me $1, $2, $5? it makes no difference because this money is going to disappear very fast.
Exactly.
The difference is you paying attention to me, making me aware that I exist. So that was one of the most powerful things I heard. Some kind of wonderful, something like that. Some kind of wonderful, I don't know, I don't remember. Greg Kinnear, the actor. So, you know, when we pay attention to those in need, when you make an effort, that's the difference. And that's where it goes back to why giving money it's not the most important part. Again, and we'll see in a couple of questions. We're not saying do not give money. If you can help, of course, if you can help with money, but that's not all. If you stop there, you're not doing much. You are giving from what you don't need normally. So if you are giving of your time, of your care, of your attention, that's what's going to make a difference. Okay.
Yeah. And he also said, the gentleman of last week, forgiveness. He also said, I remember about when Jesus was on the cross and he was going through so much pain and suffering. And after those more than 3 years that he had taught them, and none of them were there. And he asked God to forgive them. That was another one, a big statement that he had said that I looked at it so I would never think that this is what Jesus was going through. He asked God to forgive them because after those 3 years of so much teaching, they went their way, right?
Yeah, forgive them, Father, because they don't know what they're doing, right?
They know not what
they don't know what they're doing. So I'm sure that's how they look at us now. He has mercy for us, and he's giving us all the time that we need, I guess, to learn how to forgive. And these stories are powerful to take into our lives. Just so beautiful.
Yes. Anyone else? Are you in the meeting, Renato?
I have a question.
It's Renato speaking. Renato, where are you?
Okay, go ahead, Ale. Go ahead, Ale.
I was just wondering, like, let's say we still have the thought about somebody that hurted us or that we still didn't forget or need to forgive. Would it be not, how could I put, when that thought comes to mind and you realize that it's still there, if you say a prayer to that person, would that be doing anything good towards the situation?
Definitely, right? Prayer always helps. And here, when we say, we talk about forgiveness, what he told us is, you really forgave when the remembrance of the act doesn't hurt you. But there is a process to get there. Because what we try to do is force ourselves to forgive because we know that this doesn't help us, and we know that it's what we should do is to forgive, but we really, when we look deep into ourselves, we cannot forgive yet. So it's a process. We have to work on it, and prayer is the most important tool that we have to work on that. Definitely. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
The name of the movie is Same Kind of Different as Me.
Same kind of difference, okay.
The same kind of difference as
Same.
me. Beautiful movie.
Same kind of difference?
As me.
Oh, okay.
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 Any other questions? We're good here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Go on, Paco.
Okay. Jesus also said, love your enemies. Does this contradict our natural tendency? And isn't unfriendliness due to a lack of sympathy between spirits? You cannot possibly love your enemies tenderly and passionately. That is not what we meant. That is not what he meant. To love one's enemies is to forgive them and give them good in return for evil. In this way, you place yourself above them. Whereas by seeking revenge, you would place yourself beneath them.
Yes, that complements what the question Ale just had, because that's a very misunderstood concept from the teachings of Jesus.
That's true.
Love your enemies, or give the right face for those that hit you in the face. Give the other face. What Jesus was trying to teach us was to send a different kind of vibration. You receive a vibration of hate, and you send back a vibration of love. But the love here is not the same love you have for your loved ones. It's not hate. Okay, we don't have the word because love is a word that have different meanings. Here, what he says is, when someone hates you, don't hate it back. Because when you enter into the same low level vibrations that the person is sending to you, you are no better than them. You are exactly the same. And that's what Jesus was trying to tell us. Because especially when we understand about how our connections are made with other spirits and other human beings, we know that our connections are made through our vibrations. So if you are vibrating at a low level, not only you enter the same level as your enemy, but you attract all the other enemies from the past that are surrounding you, and you complicate your own path. So the idea here is to send a different kind of vibration, not to enter into the same level of vibration that someone is sending you. So not to enter into this difficult connection that is very difficult to break, very hard to break once you get into it. So what Jesus told us before going and making sacrifice at the altar, go and reconcile with your enemy or with your brother, because this is more important than making sacrifices to God or whatever they used to do at that time. Because if you have an enemy and you go back to the spiritual world, it only gets more complicated there on the other side. Or if you are on separate planes of existence, because then we become persecutors of one another. So if you don't allow these energies, these low-level energies, to come out of your thought process, or you try to fight them at least, because again, we are not perfect. We are going to have people that are going to hurt us, and to forgive and to love those that hurt us, it doesn't come automatically. But the understanding of it and the understanding of the necessity not to go to their level, it's the first step. So you enter, if these thoughts come to your mind, you enter into a praying state of praying. start praying, you start trying to elevate your thoughts, because we know when we elevate our thoughts, we protect ourselves. Trying to overcome those inferior feelings that are coming through us. That's what Jesus meant when he said, love your enemies. And this, of course, is very misunderstood, because people immediately think about it, love your enemy or your enemies the same way you love your parents or your loved ones, your children, and absolutely not the same. It's just a matter of vibrating at a different level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go on.
Yep.
What should we think of almsgiving? To be reduced to begging degrades people, both morally and physically. It wears them down. In a society based on divine law and justice, a provision would be made for assisting the weak without humiliating them. This way, everyone who is unable to work would be guaranteed the means necessary to live, so as not to leave their life at the mercy of chance and individual goodwill. Are you criticizing the practice of giving alms? No. Giving money to the poor is not what is reprehensible. The problem is the way in which it is too often done. Those who understand charity as preached by Jesus seek out the needy themselves without waiting for them to hold out their hand. True charity is always gentle and compassionate, because the manner of practicing kindness is as important as the deed itself. A service, when gradually rendered, has twice as much merit. If this same act is rendered in a patronizing manner, despite being accepted, the recipient's heart is not touched by it. Remember that ostentation and pretension destroy the merit of generosity in God's eyes. Jesus said, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. This teaches that charity should not be tarnished by pride. A distinction must be made between almsgiving and benevolence. The neediest individuals are not always those found begging on the side of the road. Many who are truly poor are kept back from begging by dread of humiliation and preferring to suffer silently and in secret. Those who are truly humane seek out this hidden misery and release it without any form of pretension. Love one another is the divine law by which God governs all the worlds of the universe. Love is the law of attraction for living and organized beings, and attraction is the law of love for inorganic matter. Okay, awesome. Never forget that all spirits, regardless of the degree of attachment, whether reincarnated or errant, are always placed between a more evolved spirit who guides and perfects them and a less evolved one towards which they have the same duties to fulfill. Be charitable, and not just by coldly tossing a coin to a beggar who dares to ask for it from you, but by seeking out the poverty that hides itself from plain view. Be indulgent to the faults and weaknesses of those around you. Instead of despising the ignorant and vicious, educate them and make them better. Be gentle and compassionate. Put it up. Be gentle and compassionate to those lagging behind you, and act the same with respect to the humblest beings of creation, and you will have obeyed God's law.
Saint Vincent of Paul. So this is one sign message from a specific spirit, and we're discussing here almsgiving, which we started discussing earlier. Right?
Before, yeah.
So, and the spirits start by saying, to be reduced to begging degrades people both morally and physically. It wears them down. So they are already in a very inferior position. And they say that in a society based on divine law, a provision would be made for assisting the weak without humiliating them. We have evolved a lot since when this was written.
Yes.
Social assistance nowadays is much better than it was 160 years ago. Again, far from perfect and still with a lot of issues. We just have to look at the number of homeless in the streets. But there is assistance. These homeless, they are in the streets, a lot of them, because they want to be, in a sense that there is help for them if they want to receive the help. But they find themselves in this place because we as a society cause them to end up there by the shortcomings of us in terms of mental assistance or PTSD treatment or all this sort of treatments. That's why they end up in the street. The fact that they are in the street doesn't mean that they cannot be helped and assisted there, but many of them don't want to be helped because they reached a point where they are happy is not the right word, right? Because they are
they gave up.
Yeah, they gave up on society.
They gave up.
Society gave up on them, and they gave up on society. Yes. Yeah. But again, at that time when Kardec wrote this, the problem was much worse. There was no social security, no assistance. So poor people, when they got old, they would just die of starvation or without any care because they had nowhere to go, nowhere to be assisted. There were some institutions helping and assisting at that time, but it was not even close to fulfilling the necessities, right? So what the spirits are trying to tell us here goes back to the beginning. They are not criticizing the practice of giving alms, but sometimes it's what can be done. But the problem is a lot of people think that this is the only way to help, is to give money, and they stop there. And we need to treat this problem in a more comprehensive way, meaning we have to help them and help those in need in a way that allows them to raise themselves from those situations. So if it means health treatment, mental treatment, we have to provide this to them. There are some NGOs, non-profit organizations that help families to get out of the misery level, to go up to the poverty level that works in different countries. And so this is an effort to help the family, to help in a more rational way to solve the issue and not to deal with the consequence. We have to look at the cause and try to treat the cause of the problem. But of course, if someone is hungry and desperate for food, money to buy some food is the only thing that is going to solve at that moment. So, of course, giving money, and it's not wrong in any sense, but it's really a small part of the problem. You don't solve the problem by giving money. Yes, Daniela.
So the question used the word beggars, right? Which for us is different here than the word we use homeless, as the example you were giving. And just as an example that I keep thinking about, there is a neighbor right across the street from my building, and he owns a house, right? And the past year and a half, he has changed little by little. And then he goes at night, he catches recycle things in a cart. He goes through the trashes, you know, in front of the houses. He brings everything to his house. His house is falling apart. And now when I see him walking on the streets, he looks like a homeless person we see in Manhattan or in the subways or in front of the subways in the city of New York. So, and I keep thinking, so it's not a matter of not having a home, right? He has a home. His house is falling apart. It's a state of mind, right? Because in here, here's not like a person who doesn't have a house. A beggar is someone that it says it's done, right? Physically, morally, it has no more energy to fight, doesn't believe in society, gave up. So that's something that I know it's a controversy here in the city, that a lot of people live in the streets and they have places to go and help sometimes is offered to them, but their state of mind, it's what make them look who they look, how they look and act how they act. Right?
Yeah. Not all homeless are beggars, and not all beggars are homeless. There are different things. So Julio, go ahead, Julio.
I think Daniela brings an important point, and it's difficult with the words because, as Ron was just saying right now, not every homeless necessarily does not have a home, but also not every beggar has completely given up on society. There are diseases where you will see individuals begging for money or begging for food, and they actually have a nice place to live. They are very well clothed and everything, but it's a disease. So it's very hard for us, as Daniela pointed out, it's very hard for us to find a word for it. We should understand this as people who have, in some way, like Ron was saying, given up on society, but not in the sense of giving up on society just from their point of view, but that our society has created niches, has created situations where people can fall in like a pitfall and not be able to come out of it, because we all have issues, psychological issues and problems in our past. And we may seem, we actually deem our situation so hopeless that then we end up giving up on society. The point for us to see here is that we need to make a society that is more humane, that will not create these pitfalls where people might find themselves in at one point or another and not be able to come out of them.
Paco, just read the last question. It's 7:30, but it's everything that we covered. So you'll tell us a little bit more on this, what we've been discussing here.
Aren't there people reduced to begging due to their own fault? Of course, but if a complete moral education had taught them to practice God's law, they would not have fallen victim to the excess that caused their demise. The improvement of your world ultimately relies on spreading this education.
So here what the spirits are telling us is that some people that are beggars, it's their own responsibility. How did they end up there? A series of things that happen that they end up again. We cannot fully blame individuals and we cannot fully blame society. Blame is all around. Our society sometimes cause these problems, but there are people that cause their own problems, and we know that when a lot of individuals create their own problems. But again, we as society, as the Spirit said, the improvement of your world ultimately relies on spreading education. This education, the moral education. We have to practice God's law, but this is a process. We are better now than we were. I don't know how many 150 years ago, or better now than we were 50 years ago. And again,
Yes.
I bring the statistics that we had 200 years ago. 85% of people lived in extreme poverty. Now it's less than 10% of the population of the world. So it's a huge transformation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good.
So anyways, 7:32, we have to stop here. Carol, you do your final prayer. Just before the final prayer, let me remind you of what we have this weekend, because we have a very busy weekend. On Saturday, we start on Saturday with a lecture by the United States Spiritist Federation. It's During Storms in Our Life by Stephen Bertozzo, who is from the Spiritist Society of Ireland. That's at 11 a.m. through the United States Spiritist Federation on Facebook and on YouTube. Then on Sunday, we have our regular studies of the book In the Greater World at 11 a.m. We are studying the chapter Sex. We haven't finished yet. And then at 3 p.m., we are going to have a lecture live on YouTube, SGNY YouTube, The Mediumistic Being by Jacobson Santana Trovão. He's the national coordinator of the mediumship department of the Brazilian Spiritist Federation. It's a seminar, a 2-hour seminar that is going to be very interesting. He's going to approach mediumship not from the point of mediumship, but by the point of the medium. So the mediumistic being. It's going to be in Portuguese, and Julio will do the consecutive translation. It will be our first experience of a live lecture, through a virtual lecture with consecutive translation. So again, all the information is on the emails you should be receiving. Saturday, 11 a.m., Sunday, 11 a.m., the study group, and then Sunday at 3 p.m., the lecture on the YouTube, SGNY YouTube. Okay, Carol, you can do the prayer now. Thanks.
Okay. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we are grateful for the opportunity this evening to be together, to share the teachings in the Spirit's book, the communications that we have received, and a better understanding of the knowledge that we have attained. We are grateful to our spiritual benefactors, the mentors, and the good spirits who are here with us, providing us inspiration, guidance, and allowing us to feel a greater sense of courage and well-being. We are truly grateful for the comfort that we have received. And this evening, may we put into practice the teachings that we have received. May we share the courage that we have within to do this and to share this with others. May we know that charity is love in action. It's not necessarily meaning giving of alms. It could be, but it is also being indulgent, also forgiving, and also impacting the lives of others through our discernment. May we be grateful for what we have learned, what we have received, and may we share this from our hearts. As we close this portion of our meeting tonight, may we continue with our prayers and with our studies, our mindfulness and contemplations throughout the week. We know that we have many challenges, but we know that we have the guidance of our benefactors and our good spirits who are with us and among us. We ask for the safety, the well-being, the healings for others, our family, friends, and loved ones as we go forth. May we receive the love and light of Christ within, and may we share this with others throughout the week. As we close now, may we remember to be beacons of light. Go forth now in peace, so be it.